The building where I worked used to be a textile factory before it was converted into an office complex. People said the place had history, but none of us really thought much about it. Old buildings always had strange noises, pipes clanking, floors creaking, the usual. I worked for a small data processing company in downtown Chicago. Our team handled overnight data transfers for several hospitals, so someone always had to stay late. Most nights, the office was nearly empty, except for a few coworkers scattered across the floor. That's when I first started noticing Daniel. Daniel had joined the company about 2 months after I did. He was quiet, polite, and usually kept to himself. The strange thing was that he only worked night shifts, just like me. No one else seemed to know him very well, but I figured he was just the introverted type. Our desks were on opposite sides of the office, separated by rows of cubicles and a glass conference room. Every night around 9:30 p.m., he'd walk in carrying a black thermos and a small laptop bag. He never talked much, but he'd nod politely whenever we crossed paths. At first, I thought nothing of it. Then the strange things started happening. One night, around 1:15 a.m., I went to the break room to grab coffee. As I walked past the conference room, I noticed Daniel sitting inside. The lights were off, but the glow from his laptop screen lit up his face. He wasn't typing. He was just staring at the screen. I assumed he was watching something or reading a report, so I kept walking. But when I came back with my coffee, the conference room was empty. His laptop was gone too. That was odd, but people move around offices all the time, so I didn't think much of it. Until it happened again. A week later, I saw him sitting in the exact same spot at the exact same time. Laptop open, lights off, just staring. This time, I walked in. "Hey, Daniel," I said casually. He looked up slowly, like he hadn't noticed me standing there. "Yeah," he said. "You okay, man? Thought the room was empty." "I like it quiet in here," he replied. His voice sounded normal, but there was something strange about the way he said it, like he was choosing every word carefully. I shrugged and walked out, but as I left, I noticed something weird. His laptop screen was completely black. Not off, just black. No windows, no cursor, nothing. And yet he had been staring at it. After that night, I started paying closer attention. Daniel's schedule never changed. He always arrived at 9:30 p.m. sharp. He always brought the same thermos, and he always left at exactly 3 a.m. Not 2:59, not 3:01, exactly 3 o'clock. But the strange part was that I never saw him actually leave. At 2:58 or 2:59, I'd look up from my desk and he'd still be there. Then at 3:01, his desk would be empty. No footsteps, no elevator sound, nothing. Just gone. One night I decided to test something. At 2:55 a.m., I walked to the hallway that led to the elevators. There was only one way out of the office floor, and I stood right there watching the doors. 2:58, 2:59, 3 o'clock. No one came out. The elevator never opened. Confused, I walked back toward the office. Daniel's desk was empty. His chair was still slowly spinning. That's when things started to feel wrong. The next morning, I asked HR about him. "Daniel who?" the woman asked. "Daniel, I realized I didn't even know his last name. The guy who works nights with me." She checked the employee database. "No Daniel on the night shift," she said. "Maybe a contractor?" I suggested. She searched again. Nothing. I laughed awkwardly. "Well, he sits near the conference room. Tall guy, dark hair." She shook her head. "You might be thinking of someone from another department." But that didn't make sense. The night shift was only 5 people. Everyone knew everyone, except Daniel. That night, when I got to work, I asked my coworker, Marcus. "Hey, the guy who sits by the conference room, Daniel." Marcus frowned. "What guy?" "Daniel, quiet dude, works nights." Marcus shook his head. "There's no Daniel here." I laughed again, but it sounded forced. "Yeah, there is. He's here every night." Marcus looked genuinely confused. Man, I've worked nights here for 3 years. I've never seen anyone named Daniel. At that moment, the elevator dinged. 9:30 p.m. The doors opened, and Daniel stepped out. He walked past us like usual. Marcus didn't even react. He didn't look at him. He didn't say anything. It was like Daniel wasn't there. I stared at Marcus. You didn't see that? See what? He asked. Daniel just walked past us. Marcus looked at the empty hallway. Dude, you good? Chill ran down my spine. That night, I couldn't focus on work. I kept glancing across the office. Daniel was sitting at his desk, typing slowly. Around midnight, he stood up and walked to the conference room again. The lights stayed off. The laptop glowed faintly, and he stared at it. At 1:20 a.m., curiosity got the better of me. I walked in again. Daniel? He didn't respond. Hey. Still nothing. I stepped closer. Daniel. Then he spoke, without looking up. You're not supposed to notice. My stomach tightened. Notice what? He slowly turned his head toward me. His face looked pale. Too pale. I've been trying to keep it quiet, he said. Keep what quiet? He pointed at the laptop. Look. Against my better judgment, I leaned closer. The screen wasn't black this time. It was showing security footage. Our office. From above. Like a ceiling camera. But something was wrong. The footage looked old, grainy. And the office looked different. Older furniture. Different layout. Then I noticed the timestamp. October 14th, 2009. I frowned. Why are you watching old footage? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he pointed at the screen again. Watch. On the footage, I saw someone sitting at the same desk where Daniel normally worked. A man. Same height. Same build. Same clothes. It was Daniel, but younger. Suddenly, people ran into the office in the video. Paramedics. Police. They surrounded the desk. The man, Daniel, was slumped over. Someone shouted something. The camera angle shifted slightly, and I saw his face. Gray. Lifeless. I felt my chest tighten. What happened? Daniel spoke quietly. I died here. The words made the room feel 10 degrees colder. I laughed nervously. Okay, that's not funny. He looked directly at me. I had a heart attack during a night shift. My throat went dry. No one found me for hours. I backed away from the table. This is some kind of joke. I didn't leave, he continued calmly. I just kept working. My hand started shaking. That's impossible. Daniel slowly closed the laptop. You're the first person who's actually noticed me. The lights flickered. For the first time since I'd known him, Daniel smiled. But something about the smile was wrong. Too wide. Too still. Most people don't. My heart was pounding now. So, what happens now? I asked. He stood up. I usually leave at 3. The digital clock on the wall read 2:59 a.m. He walked toward the door. I followed him into the hallway. The office lights flickered again. The elevator dinged. Daniel stepped inside. Before the doors closed, he looked at me. See you tomorrow. The doors shut. I rushed forward and pressed the button. When the elevator reopened, it was empty. The next morning, I went straight to the building manager. I asked about the factory before it became offices. He looked uncomfortable. There was an incident years ago, he said. Night shift worker died at his desk. My stomach dropped. Do you remember his name? The manager checked an old file. Then he looked up at me. Daniel Harper. I didn't go back to the night shift after that. But sometimes, when I walk past the building late at night, I look up at the 4th floor windows. And every once in a while, at exactly 9:30 p.m., I swear I see someone sitting at the conference room table, staring at a laptop screen that glows in the dark, and waiting for someone to notice him again. Most people think warehouses are quiet places at night. Long rows of shelves, dim lighting, and the distant hum of machines. But if you've ever worked the night shift in one, you know they're never really silent. There's always something moving. I worked at a distribution center outside Phoenix, Arizona. It was a massive building, bigger than 3 football fields combined. The company shipped electronics all over the country, and because of the demand, we ran operations 24 hours a day. I got assigned to the night shift loading team. Our job was simple: scan packages, load pallets, and prepare trucks for morning delivery. It was boring work, but the pay was decent, and the night shift meant fewer supervisors watching over us. At least that's what I thought when I started. The first strange thing I noticed was locker 27. Every worker had a locker in the break room. Mine was number 26. Right next to it was locker 27. But it was always locked. Not just locked, sealed. A strip of yellow tape ran across it with the words "Do not use" written in black marker. Naturally, people talked about it. On my first night, I asked one of the older workers, a guy named Tom, "What's with locker 27? Tom looked up from his sandwich and frowned. "You're new, right?" "Yeah." He shrugged. "Just don't mess with it." That answer only made me more curious. Over the next few weeks, I asked around, but no one gave me a clear answer. Some workers said it was broken. Others said it belonged to someone who quit years ago. But one night, a forklift driver named Carla finally told me something different. "It used to belong to a worker named Eric," she said quietly. "What happened to him?" Carla hesitated before answering. "He died here." That got my attention. "How?" "Accident," she said. Or at least, that's what management called it. Before I could ask more, the supervisor walked into the break room, and the conversation ended. But the story stuck with me. A few nights later, something strange happened. It was around 2:10 a.m., the slowest part of the shift. Most of the workers were spread across the warehouse scanning packages. I was in aisle 14 stacking boxes when I heard the sound of metal clanking behind me. I turned around. No one was there. The aisle stretched for hundreds of feet, lined with tall shelves stacked with televisions and computer monitors. The lights above flickered slightly. Then I heard it again. Clank, like someone hitting a locker door. But the lockers were in the break room on the other side of the warehouse. I tried to ignore it and went back to work. A minute later, the warehouse intercom crackled. Usually the supervisor used it to call out truck numbers, but this time it was just static. Then a voice, very faint. "Help." I froze. "Hello?" I said, looking around. The voice came again. "Help me." The radio on my belt buzzed. It was Tom. "Hey, did you just hear that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Someone on the intercom?" "Supervisor says he didn't touch it." We both stayed quiet for a moment. Then Tom said something that made my stomach twist. The voice sounded like it was coming from the break room. I didn't want to go there. But curiosity won. When I entered the break room, the lights were off. Only the vending machines were glowing in the darkness. Everything was silent. Then I heard it. Clank. Locker 27. The sound came from inside it. I walked slowly toward the lockers. The yellow tape across locker 27 looked old and brittle. Another sound came from inside. Scrape, like fingernails dragging across metal. My heart started pounding. "Hello?" I said nervously. No response. Then suddenly, bang! The locker door slammed from the inside. I jumped back. "Okay, not funny," I muttered, assuming someone had somehow gotten inside. But the lock was still sealed. I reached out and touched the metal. It was freezing cold. Then the locker door vibrated again. A muffled voice came through the metal. "Please, let me out." My hands started shaking. "Who's in there?" No answer. Then the voice changed. It sounded weaker. Dark. Can't breathe. I stepped away from the locker. There was no way someone was inside. The locker wasn't big enough, and it had been sealed for years. Suddenly, the break room door opened behind me. I nearly screamed. It was Tom. "You hear that too?" he whispered. I nodded. The locker rattled again. Tom stared at it with wide eyes. That's Eric's locker. What happened to him? I asked. Tom looked like he didn't want to answer, but he did anyway. Years ago, Eric worked night shifts like us. One night, he got into a fight with a supervisor. And next morning, they found him dead. Where? Tom slowly pointed. Inside that locker. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. That's what they said, Tom replied. They said he must have climbed in as a joke. But the door locks from the outside. Tom didn't respond. At that moment, the locker shook violently. Bang, bang, bang. The voice inside screamed. "Let me out!" Tom grabbed my arm. "We need to leave." But before we could move, the yellow tape snapped and fell to the floor. The locker door slowly creaked open. The smell hit us first. Rotten. Like something that had been sealed away for years. Inside the locker, there was nothing. Just darkness. Tom exhaled shakily. "See, nothing." I nodded, relieved. Then something inside the locker moved. A shape shifted in the darkness. Slowly, a hand slid out. Gray, rotting. The fingers bent backward at impossible angles. Tom screamed and stumbled back. The hand gripped the locker door. Then a face appeared from the shadows, skin peeling. Eyes completely black. The mouth hung open, unnaturally wide. It whispered in a dry, broken voice. "Still working." I ran. Tom ran. We didn't stop until we were outside the building. The supervisor thought we were crazy. He searched the break room. The locker was empty. Still sealed. Still taped shut. Like nothing had ever happened. The next day, Tom quit. I transferred to a day shift 2 weeks later. But the strangest thing happened 3 months after that. I ran into Carla at a gas station. We talked for a while, and eventually I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. "Yeah," she said quietly. "That happens sometimes." "What does?" She looked directly at me. "Eric still works the night shift." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" Carla shrugged. "Sometimes workers hear someone scanning boxes when no one's there." "And the lockers?" She took a sip of her coffee. "Every few months." She paused. "Locker 27 opens by itself." I asked her one last question. "Does the company know?" Carla nodded slowly. "Oh yeah." Then she said something I'll never forget. "They just don't want to lose another worker." That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2:10 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo. A dark warehouse aisle. Taken from security cameras. And in the corner of the image, man in a torn warehouse uniform stood staring directly at the camera. His ID badge was still hanging from his neck. The name on it read, Eric. Under the photo was a single text message. "Still working.